murdered 10 young women and left their bodies on the hillsides along the highway.
It was as if a wave of evil washed over this town.
We are all evil in some form or another.
What they discovered upon their arrival was almost unspeakable.
We are all evil in some form or another. I'm not guilty.
The dead won't bother you. It's the living you gotta worry about.
If I couldn't keep them there with me whole, at least I felt that I could keep their skeletons.
But no matter what I did, I could not undo the terrible harm I had caused.
In Los Angeles, a killer the police are calling the Hillside Strangler has murdered 10 young women and left their bodies on the hillsides along the highway.
It was as if a wave of evil washed over this town.
We are all evil in some form or another.
What they discovered upon their arrival was almost unspeakable.
We are all evil in some form or another. I'm not guilty.
The dead won't bother you. It's the living you gotta worry about.
If I couldn't keep them there with me whole, at least I felt that I could keep their skeletons.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
We're back
Welcome.
again.
Soothing, calming voice. Let me be your quarantine angel.
Nice. So welcome to another BTC Quaren-Stream.
Hi. I'm Janelle.
And we're still in shelter in place.
Our houses.
Obviously, since you're still seeing us, we're still doing this thing.
As you can tell.
I love how your little like hanging in the back has been changing from week to week. Like last week it was Halloween themed. Is that the one you normally have up?
Yeah, this is what I normally have in here. I have lots of art on my dining room walls, but this is the big wall that has my vintage paint by numbers.
Ooh. So we're back again. This week was, what did we say it was? Fandom Friday?
Fandom Friday!
Yeah.
I came geeked out in my Doctor Who.
Okay, hold on. I gotta adjust the camera here and I'll show you. I was wearing my fandom shirt.
I went more nerd culture.
Well,
I have my Doctor Who Weeping Angel mug. If you put hot liquid in it, all of these headstones turn to Weeping Angels.
I have,
and then I have a little TARDIS pin.
See, I gotta show you the stuff. This is including the stuff on my desk that I have.
Okay.
So I have an adipose, if we're talking Doctor Who.
Right on.
People's fat cells. It's super adorable, but it's really squishy. And I have the Marauders map from Harry Potter.
Nice.
It folds
Very
out
nice.
into like a whole, like, it's seriously like 8 feet long. Like, it's huge, and it has all the little flaps and everything. I take it out and undo it, but I don't really feel like dealing with that at the moment.
Yeah, I thought Fandom Friday would be fun. I'm not like traditional, like wear a t-shirt, of my favorite, whatever. I have like little pins or a mug or something. That's my fandom.
Yeah. I'm a big like collector of t-shirts, number one, but just like general, just like things like the map or the toy, or I have a little, my desk is kind of where I keep all of my like nerdy, like super fan stuff. This is Portal. my little week.
Okay. Yeah,
This is
nice.
like one of my all-time favorite video games. That's actually this, and the adipose are from Tiff, our sound producer, Tiff Follmann.
Wonder. Yeah.
And the map is from
Yeah.
friend of the show, Waddy Julian. So
There you go.
yeah, talk about what we're
Yeah, I
drinking
got all this
today.
stuff like
And fandom. Look what I got. It
Starbucks is a
doesn't have
fandom.
the green thing, the green logo anymore, but the Starbucks has started
Yeah.
reopening.
Yeah.
I'm so
I
excited.
have an Arnold Palmy in my
Ooh, non-alcoholic or
every day of the
alcoholic?
week.
Oh. All right, so let's get started with some stuff.
Yeah.
Enough of us talking about the things that we love. Let's talk about another thing we love. It's true
Right?
crime.
I mean, what we do is a fandom in and of itself. So
It's true.
this is very
Okay.
meta.
So, and we didn't actually talk about before. We didn't really talk about what we got going on tonight before we get started. So I have no idea what all is happening tonight.
I mean, I don't have like a traditional game. It's just like a fun fact trivia. So that'll be
Ooh.
interesting.
Okay. So I just
Yeah.
had a couple of news stories that I found this week. In Australia is where we're going to start today. This one comes from NPR. So in 1988, there was a 27-year-old man named Scott Johnson. He died after falling from a cliff, and it was originally determined by the police to be a suicide. However,
He wasn't playing Pokemon Go too close to a cliff.
not in 1988, he was not. Although I would love to see what 80s Pokemon would have looked like.
Far out, I imagine.
So they had originally deemed it a suicide, but his case became open. It went from close to open in 2012. And 5 years later, in 2017, police determined that instead his death was likely a result of an anti-gay hate crime. Now, if some of you know your 80s gay history, it was not necessarily a
Nobody
safe
cared.
time. Yeah, nobody gave a shit. But it wasn't necessarily like a safe time for people, for same-sex couples or people who were not in your traditional, one man, one woman relationship. Like, it wasn't great. There was a lot of hate crimes happening.
I mean, there was still some into the 90s.
Yes, yeah. This was like.
I mean, there still is some.
Right, exactly. But
yeah,
this was like kind of the boiling over time when it really started, because I think the
AIDS crisis and everything.
Right, and I think the violence became less like hidden. It was just like more in your face violence against homosexuals. And so they kind of took a look back at this case. According to this article by NPR, a Sydney police review of suspicious deaths from the 1970s to 2000 found that at least 27 men were murdered by homophobic attackers during that period of time. And so earlier this week, they actually made an arrest in this case, which is kind of amazing.
Oh, wow.
A 49-year-old male. He was arrested and actually charged with the murder from 88. I was like, good on you guys. I'm glad that they decided to go back and look, like, reopen, and were open to considering alternatives to what may have seemed like a suicide in the beginning,
Yeah.
Okay. What else we got here? Oh, COVID. We do have some COVID news. Sorry, guys.
COVID.
Well, and this is one of the things I've heard from people is they're not entirely convinced that the mask, like wearing masks in public, is a trend that's going to continue. And some people have concerns about safety as far as robberies or, attempted muggings or some of these things that you would normally get people's faces on cameras. But if they're required to wear a mask, now all of a sudden you're giving people an excuse to have their face covered. You know what I mean? Like, I've heard some
Right.
people be a little weary about that, but there are some states that are considering criminalization of using COVID-19 as a weapon. Now, I think at this point, I know that sounds a little weird, but I think,
What?
have you heard some of these stories of people like walking into a store with a sign that says, I had COVID-19, and then deliberately like coughing on all of the produce or like licking all of the cleaning products, or you know what, have you heard of any of this yet?
I didn't see it where people were wearing signs, but I definitely saw a bunch of TikTok videos of kids licking shit.
Yeah.
But it didn't say or whatever. It was if it was confirmed that they had COVID or if they were just being dumb shits.
Yeah, there's been a couple of cases, and I've seen some people get charged with everything from like destruction of property, because of course now all of that product has to be thrown out whether or not
Yeah.
they test positive, but also terrorism charges I've seen on these as well.
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
So some states are considering criminalizing the weaponization of COVID-19 in a way that's consistent with when states made undisclosed HIV exposure a crime. It's kind of what it's being compared to now. And this is, of course, when it was at the forefront of like literally everything during the 80s. A lot of states, well, I take that back. It was about half of states put laws on the books that made, whether it was intentional or not, and you didn't even necessarily have to have it. If you claimed that you had HIV and like infected somebody, that was also considered a crime because of how broad the laws were when they were written. So
Just like people claiming falsely that they have a bomb or something.
right. So some states are considering putting laws on the books regarding COVID-19 in a similar fashion. In this article that I saw from Reuters, they actually provided a couple examples of what people have been doing since the COVID-19 outbreak. There was a man in Michigan who wiped his nose and face on the shirt of a store employee who was trying to enforce a mask wearing requirement. He was charged with assault and battery, and if he's convicted, he faces 3 months behind bars and a $500 fine. So that guy was 68. That just kind of is like, okay.
Not surprising.
I know.
I'm resisting the okay boomer jokes.
I know. I almost said it out of reflex and was like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't. Although I was listening to our episode that is coming out on Sunday today, and we definitely talk about okay boomer in that, and I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Another case in St. Petersburg, Florida, there was a man who coughed and spit on police and threatened to spread the virus as they responded to domestic violence calls to his home. He's looking at 5 years in prison on federal charges of perpetrating a biological weapons hoax after his test results.
I mean, then he for
came
sure
back
would get COVID.
Yeah.
If he went to jail. So,
right. Oh my God, true.
Give him what he wants.
Another case was out of San Antonio, where a man claimed on Facebook that he had paid somebody to go and spread the virus at a grocery store. His threat was deemed false, but he was arrested and charged with a biological weapons hoax. So you can kind of see the breadth of ways people are being charged. I don't know that there has been one set way that anybody's kind of settled on for this, but there are HIV advocates for HIV positive people who are kind of cautioning lawmakers not to make these so broad that it would unfairly punish poor and minority people, as the laws did when they were put on the books regarding HIV in the 80s. Like that was kind of a big issue with some of the laws that they put in. So I think it's interesting that states are kind of looking at this issue. I think there does need to be some decisions made, and I think there needs to be some consistency as far as charging across the states. I know that's hard to get when you're talking state to state, but like,
yeah,
you know, when you're getting everything from just like assault charges to literal biological weapons hoax charges. Like, that seems like too broad of a scale to be charging people. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, well, I can understand why if in terms of assault, like if it was targeted towards one person, or when they talk about biological weapon, if it was just like that person just going around touching shit in a grocery store. So there is like different levels of infection
Yeah.
that I think they're trying to look at.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's what I got for news today. The other stuff I have to talk about is about streaming things. So I don't know if we want to go into that yet
Okay.
or no.
Yeah, let's do that because what the two things I have to talk about kind of play off of each other. So we can talk about streaming stuff. Let's talk about it.
All
We're
right.
streaming right now.
We're gonna try to let me try that again. We're gonna talk about trial by media because we need to, and I think it's gonna be a very in-depth conversation. But before we do that, because I realized, as happens occasionally, because to everybody's surprise, Janelle and I are not perfect. I know. It's shocking.
I'm sorry. I don't know what you're talking about.
I can't believe you didn't know this, but we are not perfect. We missed one. You and I. Well, you might not have, but we haven't talked about it yet, and it came out at like the beginning of April, and I'm kind of surprised.
Okay.
Considering we've been doing such a good job of like keeping people up to date on like what you can watch while you're stuck at home doing nothing. You're like me. So on HBO, there is a documentary called The Art of Political Murder. Have you heard of it?
I didn't watch it, no.
Have you heard
I did
of
not watch that, no. Yeah.
Oh.
I, for a hot minute, didn't have HBO because I was stealing it from a relative.
Guilty.
They moved, so they stopped service for a second. I was like,
didn't take that into account.
Good to know.
Yeah. You guys are not allowed to move without telling me. I need to know when I don't have HBO.
It just goes to show I don't talk to my family. We moved, yeah. Yeah, I realized that when my HBO stopped working for a day.
So, The Art of Political Murder, it came out towards the beginning of April. It's an investigation into the truth behind the murder of Guatemalan Bishop Juan Girardi. And Bishop Girardi was a human rights activist who worked with the indigenous Mayan people within the country. And in 1988, he was appointed to the government's National Reconciliation Commission to begin the process of accounting for abuses that had happened during the Civil War. Only 2 days after he announced the release of the report on the victims of the Guatemalan Civil War, Bishop was murdered. He was Bishop Girardi was attacked in his garage and beaten to death. His murderers were finally brought to court in 2001 in the first ever civilian trial of military members in Guatemalan history. There were 3 army officers who were convicted of his death, and a priest was sentenced as an accomplice to the murders. Now, it definitely seems to me that this has this kind of like political weirdness to it. You know, obviously there's a connection.
You think politics in the United States are fucked up? Go to Central America and South America.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's...
You want to talk about a 2-party system? They have a 1-party system masquerading as a 2-party system.
Yeah. So I just wanted to highlight that because I was like looking through things. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like it totally passed me by. Looked pretty good. Not our normal, just like straight up murder, like weird tiger owning dude, mullet.
I'm sure there are people that own plenty of tigers or jaguars down there.
But I just want to put that out there. It's called The Art of Political Murder. It's on HBO. You can watch it right now. Let's talk about trial by media.
Yeah, do it. I texted you and I was like, girl,
Yeah, it was funny because I was
did
like,
you watch this yet?
I was like, it has only been out for 24 hours, Janelle. You gotta give me time.
I was only one episode in.
True. So, if for those who don't know, Trial by Media came out on Netflix on Monday, I think.
Monday.
It was earlier this week. Um,
Yeah.
it is a like 5 or 6 part series that kind of takes a look at the role the media plays um, in the criminal justice system and the way everything kind of works out. That's on a very base level. I am going to say right off the bat, I'm actually a big fan of this because I feel like every episode was a slightly different take on the media's role. It was not none of the
They were
cases
covering cases too that were vastly different.
And I thought it was a really good look at for instance the way people who are accused of crimes use the media to their advantage versus the media turning on somebody who is accused of a crime versus like the first episode is about the Jenny Jones murder. And that was
that was a good one to start with.
It was because it was also kind of like the beginning of court TV, and they talk about cameras starting to come into the courtroom and gavel to gavel coverage and everybody feeling like they're a part of this trial. I mean, it just really was kind of this vast look at a lot of different angles of media and kind of the impact it has on various aspects of things. What do you got? What do you got to say? I could talk forever.
I really enjoyed it. In particular, the last 2 episodes. I don't know if you watched this, but it was a New Bedford rape case, and of course, good old Rod Blagojevich.
Oh my God,
that's what hooked me. I was like, oh, Rod Blagojevich.
Yeah,
let me hunker down and watch this.
Yeah,
but I think the most eye-opening one was the New Bedford rape case.
Oh my
I
God.
have never wanted to throw my fucking TV across the room so hard in my life.
Yeah, so that was actually a case that I was unfamiliar with, and I was kind of surprised because I'm thinking a case of this magnitude, I'm a little shocked that I was not aware of it. It just is not something that has come across,
Yeah, and I remember reading a bit about it in relation to another case that I covered because of the fact that they kind of let the identity of the victim go. Like they released it because they were filming everything on live TV. And they did a great job of not showing her face, but then they asked her what her fucking name was, and that's public record, and then it was obviously live broadcasted. So New Bedford is like it's a city, but it has a small town feel. It's it's a fishing village. And of course, everyone knew exactly who she was the minute they said her name. And then it does this horrible switch of being, for this victim to saying that she asked for it.
Yeah.
And just saying that out loud makes you want to punch someone in the face.
Yeah, that episode.
I'm sorry.
That episode in particular was
but nobody right.
Yeah. That episode in particular.
Opinions O'Malley. Sorry.
Janelle, that's why they call you Opinions O'Malley. That episode in particular was really tough to watch because for a lot of reasons. I think they do interview the judge in that case. And I thought it was very I don't want to say honorable, but like he definitely owned the fact that he had made a very big mistake in
he was like, you could just see it on his face. He's like, oh shit.
And I don't
dummy.
Unfortunately, I don't think taking ownership of those kinds of mistakes is something that is common with judges or prosecutors or police officers or
you know what I mean? Lawyers, didn't do jack shit either. And it's like, you knew that she was going to have to say her name and you didn't stop it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was something that I was like, well, at least, I mean, I'm not saying that makes it okay, obviously, but at least he looks back on that and says, yeah, like, we fucked up. Like, that was a big mistake.
Yeah.
The other thing, like you said, is they definitely talk about, and you still see this today, whether it was the woman's fault. Was she dressed a certain way? Was she asking for it? Did she want, you heard a lot of this in like the Harvey Weinstein trial, for instance. Like they knew what they were doing. They were asking for it. Like,
throttle these people when they say shit like that.
Right. It's like, what on
I could be stark fucking naked in the street and going, look at me. I'm not asking to be raped, okay? It doesn't matter how provocative or how many people you slept with. Nobody is asking to be raped.
Right.
God damn it.
Yeah.
It enrages me.
Yeah. That, it really makes me sick. It makes me feel sick. It makes me feel disgusted that people think like that. Like, it's just, and it still happens all the time in 2020.
Oh God,
like,
yeah.
That's
it's disgusting.
So cool with people. I literally was just reading I think it was an article on Politico about Tara Reid and the Joe Biden allegations that was talking
it's
about
a great example.
how she has this lengthy divorce record and uses people for free rent and money and is a manipulator. And I was like, after having just watched this literally yesterday, I was like, are you fucking kidding me still with this kind of reporting? I don't know.
It's so nauseating that I can't even. And the fact, like, and there were women who were being interviewed by the news saying, well, what was she wearing? I was like,
I know.
Why was she in a bar by herself? It's like, I'm sorry. I go places by myself all the time. All the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And they asked her during the trial, was she drunk? They asked the nurse, did she have, any signs that she was intoxicated? And the nurse is like, nope. Like, she was totally fine. She had her wits about her. She was not, impaired.
And then they interviewed another guy on the street, and he was like, well, maybe she was looking to have sex with a couple of guys. And I'm like, I'm sorry. What did you just say?
I know.
And then it went wrong. It's like, no.
Yeah, that one particularly was really hard to watch. I will say
I had to stop for a second because I was like, I'm getting red right now with rage.
And I think what the series did really well is because it picked such an array of cases, it wasn't like all super serious necessarily. There was some more fun episodes, I guess you could say. There were some like that were far more on the serious side. Richard Scrushy is like one of that was like, because of course, white collar crime, like, let's be real.
Yes.
But that one in particular I loved because that was a perfect example of somebody manipulating the media. And his lawyer talks about it. I mean, he doesn't admit to it, but his lawyer was definitely like, listen, we told him he needed to change the way that people thought about him. So he went and joined a black church.
Yeah.
Started preaching on TV.
Which is another problem in and of itself.
He started funneling these philanthropic funds from places that would not have had them before to places that may not have had them in these towns in Alabama. It seemed to me a very obvious ploy to try and taint the jury pool. I mean, I feel like he can sit there and say all he wants that it wasn't, but it just, my opinion, it feels like it was. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, but they also raised really good questions. The vigilante case too talks about a lot of the tainting of the juror pool. They wanted to move. That one was another.
Yeah.
Another rage-filled.
Because when you have somebody on camera literally confessing to saying, if I had more bullets, I would have kept shooting these people, it starts to be less self-defense. Like, that's the part about, I'm just like, he's telling
He's
you.
very evidently a racist piece of shit who just wanted to shoot a bunch of unarmed African Americans in a public fucking transit space. What is wrong with you? And then all of the rants and rambling that he kept just espousing after the fact. I was like, if you cannot see that he is mentally disturbed, there is a larger issue.
That was wild. Just the fact that they had him going into great detail on camera was like, how is this not enough? Like, why? How are you defending that? You know, it's like
he just kept digging his hole deeper and deeper and deeper. It just blew my mind.
Yeah. So that's trial by media. This is why we talked about it second, is because we got a lot to say on that one.
We didn't even talk about the Rod Blagojevich case.
Oh my gosh.
We were living in history, darling.
It's true. Yeah, and that, I don't know. That one was crazy because that was a case where it very much was the media loved him. He got caught doing something not super great. The media didn't love him, and then he went on this media blitz to try and, like, one of the guys in that episode said, you know, it's not great to be the butt of the joke, but being the butt of the joke is better than being criminal. And so the attorneys, the state's attorneys, got nervous about all of that. I mean, it was like a very weird...
there's some really great jokes and one-liners and a lot of fun wordplay with his last name.
Oh, yeah, kind of. What was it? Blagojevich? And I was like...
Yeah, Blagojevich, yeah.
I was like... Oh,
dad jokes on point!
Come on. Was that Janelle calling in? Yeah.
Maybe!
Yeah, that... I don't know. That one, I think, hits particularly in a way. It hits me in a way because it's like... That's us. That's Illinois. They were like listing off all of the criminal governors and how long they got sent away for, and I was just like, yep.
That's how we do. But it did bring a lot of interesting, information about how we over-sentence people. So there was like that good conversation at the end about over-sentencing people. Yeah, he did wrong, but he went away for a very, 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 very long time.
Years he got sentenced.
Yeah, and is unnecessarily so, I think. Because the worst thing you could do to a politician or a person like that who craves the spotlight is to make everything that they've done a farce. Being in that predicament in and of itself is a punishment enough because they're being made a joke, and their entire point and their egoism is to be in the spotlight. And so now they're being kind of tarnished. I feel like that's probably more of a punishment than going to jail.
Yeah, well, and especially like in his case, when they impeached him, they also made it so he could not run for public office in the state of Illinois ever.
Exactly. So I feel like that is his sentence. He can't do jack shit now.
Yeah.
You know?
But he is like a politician at heart. Like, that is his whole deal.
Oh yeah.
Because they talk about even when he
and
got
seeing the
from
pictures,
prison, he was still
seeing his release pictures, it was like you could just see the years.
Oh my god.
on his face and in his white hair.
Right. Holy moly, yeah. So anyway, check it out. It's very good. It's very, very good.
It's good.
It's also executive.
I don't often text
Clooney.
Vicky, oh my god, have you seen this? But
it's true. It's true.
That was one of them.
Yeah, only when they're like really, really, really good. I'm trying to think of, we normally do a what else have you been watching segment. What else have you been watching?
Trash TV.
Yeah.
I was watching before the 90 Days Fiance.
Oh,
I was watching what's that? Is You Marry a Stranger?
Oh, nice. Okay. I've been
Married
doing
to
it
a
up on the
Stranger.
trash TV too. I was watching Hoarders and My
Yeah.
Strange Addiction, but I
Very nice.
did actually, while we're on the topic, watch The Midnight Gospel on Netflix.
Hmm.
And I bring this up
Haven't seen it yet.
because so it's a series that is done by Pendleton Ward, who is the creator of Adventure Time. It's a very so I'm gonna say it's very weird, which I love. Like I love weird TV.
Like Adventure Time.
It's even weirder.
Not unlike
though.
Adventure Time.
It's even weirder. However, I think what they do, and I'm sure there's articles written about this, and I haven't looked it up yet. I think what they do is they get these actors or people that are coming in to do the voices. They have like cameos from various people. They come in and they sit them down and they have conversations with them about whatever their thing is, and then they take those conversations and they animate them into episodes. Kind of. It all follows one storyline, but at the same time, like it's very conversational. I'm bringing this up because I believe it is in episode 3. The cameo is done by Damien Eccles, who you might recognize
All right.
as one of the West Memphis Three, who was wrongly convicted and released. But in his public life, he's become an actor, and he's also written some books on magic, which was
With a K.
Magic with a K, which was a tool that helped him get through prison and a practice that he continues to study. But they talk about that in the show. Like he talks about magic and kind of his views on it and religion and the way things work. So good. It's so good. I'm going to throw that out there as a recommendation, but be prepared because it's like, you gotta like, it's a lot of existential stuff and like death.
I love it.
The woman who did
Transcendental thought. Give it to me.
the woman who does Ask a Mortician on YouTube. I forget what her name is.
What
She does Ask
does
a
what on
Mortician.
YouTube?
She wrote the
okay.
book Smoke in My Eyes about cremation, and I forget what her name is. But they talk about death.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
It's really, really good. Check it out. Your turn.
Her books are really good. My turn. Yay! So we've actually covered quite a few serial killers that have had like some sort of fandom aspect to them. How long ago was it? We covered, like I talked about Mark Twitchell in one of ours. As you remember, he was like copycatting Dexter.
Yes.
But he also like hardcore went to cons and was like all about nerd culture and would create fake like replicas of things and sell them on eBay. It was a whole thing.
Yeah.
But I was also thinking about like other people who had fandom aspects, and of course like the Aurora shooter dressed up as the Joker and dyed his hair and like did that whole thing.
Yeah.
But I came across a case that we haven't talked about that I thought was kind of interesting.
Okay.
So there was a gentleman, this isn't too long ago, there was a gentleman, his name is Nathaniel Sebastian. And he is a self-proclaimed fan of John Wayne Gacy.
Okay.
Like, avid lover of John Wayne Gacy.
All right.
And he killed his mother, Susan Mayo, and put her in a drum and buried her under their porch, a la John Wayne Gacy.
Okay.
But I just thought that it was so interesting that he just professed in the press that he was a real big fan of John Wayne Gacy. And that's why he did what he did. I just don't get it.
What? Why? I don't get that.
I mean, I'm a fan of serial killer culture. I don't murderabilia. We've discussed it. I'm not a fan of that. But to be like, I'm John Wayne Gacy's biggest fan.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of cases, I think,
killed because of that.
I think in particular when you talk about things like mass shootings, There's a lot of these. I don't know. I see, and this is the thing is I don't know that I would necessarily qualify that as fandom so much as like taking inspiration from, whereas what you have just described is a full on like fandom of a serial killer. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
a little different.
I mean, well, with the Aurora shooter, though, he like wrote in his journals about how he wanted to become the Joker. So for me, I feel like his case is definitely like more towards a fandom.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, you know, you think of other shooters like
I'm thinking of like
dressing up
Columbine, for
in
instance.
trench coats, you know? Yeah, Columbine.
They talk about what was the Basic Instincts? Is that the movie? I think that they talked
Yeah,
about a
Basic
lot in their
Instinct.
journals, and I want to say BTK came up in some of their journals and things. But that to me is very different than like what you said, like the Aurora shooter
I
wanting
think
to
they
become
also
the Joker.
mentioned like the Turner Diaries and stuff too. That was because of everything happening at the time with a bunch of those like standoffs in Waco and everything. The Turner Diaries really became sensationalized, and I think they mentioned that in their journals as well.
Yeah.
Well, but I was just reading the case and I thought like there is a big difference between like being a fan of an interest in learning about like serial killers or you know, the true crime aspects and being like, I'm John Wayne Gacy's biggest fan.
Yeah, that's true. Although there were definitely people who were like that with like Manson. There's that guy who's
Manson,
like Manson was my best friend, like that guy.
Yeah. There's a serial killer culture series where they talk to the guy who said he was Charles Manson's best friend.
Yeah.
Yikes.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
That's an episode to watch.
Yeah, but we've definitely talked about sort of this murderabilia culture in an episode before, and it makes me feel weird to invite that bad juju in, but to
exactly
be a fan. Like I would never say, I am a fan of this person. Actually, so here's the thing: is I would say like total fan of this person, but not in like a, oh my god, I'm obsessed. Like I want to.
You wouldn't
like
fangirl out if you saw them.
No, I would not. Not with murderers.
Yeah,
no
the murderabilia stuff is just it's confusing to me. I can understand it, okay, because like I am in museums and I'm all about preserving history. Okay, I can get it from a perspective of if you were going to use it as a tool of education and put it in a museum or display it or talk about it in that aspect. But the people who are buying these things are doing it for the notoriety, not for anything else.
Yeah.
And so that's where I get confused. And I'm like, why would you want to own something by someone who killed massive amounts of people in very brutal ways just to have it?
Yeah.
That's my qualm with it, okay?
Yeah. True. Now, how do you feel about...
Just read about it and be satisfied.
How do you feel about these fans going out of their way to try to communicate with like whoever is in prison? Like if somebody was a huge fan of Gacy, for instance, and they went out of their way to like try and write him letters.
Like pen pal from jail kind of things. I mean, I don't know. There's also people who have married serial killers in jail. There has to be a special way that your brain works for you to be like, chill, let's talk to this guy.
Like, I want this person in my life.
If it was for research, I can understand that.
Yeah.
But if you just want to talk with the guy, like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I'm a very, very, very empathetic person, but I think that's where I draw the line in my empathy.
Yeah. I just
sorry.
Don't get that. Yeah, no kidding. I don't get that.
Yeah. So I don't have like a fun game, but I had some cool trivia about things that we're fans of.
Okay.
Because I found a couple lists, and surprisingly, none of them were on BuzzFeed.
Wow. Impressive. Come on, BuzzFeed. Get on your game.
It was from a newspaper and then Ranker. Had a couple really weird lists.
All right.
So I was, looking around, trying to figure out something weird. And John Wayne Gacy. Just everything I search, he comes up in. And it's like, is he the most Midwestern human on the face of the earth?
He's the OG Midwestern serial killer.
He is. He truly, truly is. Mm-hmm. But when I was looking this up, he came up in several different lists with several different things that he was a fan of.
Okay.
So one of them, which is pretty well known, is that he was a huge fan and loved KFC.
Yes.
Like, he owned a KFC franchise. He asked for that for part of his final meal. Mm-hmm. But really, all about KFC.
Yes, he was.
He was living that Kentucky Fried life. Like, he loved KFC.
Mm-hmm. He sure did.
But I also found that, and I'm sorry if anybody is a fan of this band, I'm not, but he really loved REO Speedwagon, which I thought was a little surprising. But then I was like, oh, wait, Midwest Dad territory.
Yep, 100%. That's what it is.
100%.
Yep.
Midwest Dad territory.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last list that I saw said that he was a really avid reader of William S. Burroughs. And I thought that was pretty weird. Because I feel like that's very
Who is that?
deep and reflective kind of writing for someone who loves KFC.
So call me dumb, but who is that? William S. Burroughs?
Let me pull up the title that he quoted from.
As I say, is he like a known for one of his? I'm sure well known for something.
Yes, but let me pull up the list, and I'll speak specifically what Gacy quoted from.
Okay.
So he's really well known for like Naked Lunch, but crap.
Naked Lunch.
It was one of his lesser known works.
Okay.
Yeah. Not what you think. So it talks a lot about like queer culture, but
Okay.
I can't find the name. Anyway, but it was like a smaller novel that he was not well known for.
Okay.
That was very like meta, and he really enjoyed William S. Burroughs, and I'm just like, oh okay. Especially since like he's a closeted homosexual.
Yeah, true.
I feel like.
True. Good point.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't get it. Anyway. So then I went down on the list to some more well-known and some unknown. I think we might have talked about Dorothea Puente before.
Okay.
But in case you're not familiar, she was a woman in California who owned a boarding house and would, she started stealing checks from all of the people, like the Social Security checks from all the people that she was housing. And then eventually she started killing them and then keeping theirs.
Okay.
So 0 to 10.
All right.
But she's an elderly woman doing this, taking from other elderly people. Not as old as most of the people that she killed, but she apparently is a huge fan of Harry Potter.
Hey!
And that was weird for someone who's in their late 50s, early 60s to be like, Harry Potter is the best novel I've read.
Maybe she just missed out on her wizarding childhood, and she just wanted to be a wizard.
I don't know.
She wants to be a wizard, Janelle.
But that was like they asked her what her favorite book was, or her favorite author was, and she's like, Harry Potter novels are absolutely the best thing I've ever read.
I
mean,
okay. All right.
It was strange. It was very strange. And now we're all very familiar with Jeffrey Dahmer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was reading about this, and just based on what I know about the Jeffrey Dahmer's case, he was a huge fan of Black Sabbath. And that was puzzling to me.
Why? Wait, why?
He just doesn't look like a person who listens to Black Sabbath.
No, but I feel like he's got the
He looks
darkness
like a Simon and
inside.
Garfunkel kind of a guy.
Yeah, but I feel like his inside is really angry and like the Black Sabbath, like, rawr, I'm mad kind of rock. It's not metal, but it's like
rawr, I'm mad.
Yeah, you know.
Metal adjacent.
Metal adjacent.
Not the first couple of albums. It's not.
Yeah.
Like,
no.
It's different.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was interesting because, like, but he's very, like, into this unrequited love kind of a deal going on, too, right? He's very, like, romantic in his ideas of creating a zombie sex slave.
True. Oh, so romantic.
I don't know. It just... What a romantic. Oh, drill my brain, darling.
Excuse me? Oh,
yeah,
my God.
that was his thing. It was his kink, was to the dome.
Yep. Not the conversation I expected to be having on a Friday night, but here we are.
Drill bits to the dome. I provide all kinds of entertainment for you.
Oh, my God.
But the last gentleman that I read about is not a case that we covered, but I thought it was pretty interesting. He was a college student named Kyle Shaw, and he was very into Fight Club, the novel, not the movie.
Yeah. Oh, wait,
he made a point.
I got that.
The novel and not the movie.
I have
you got that.
In my
good old Czechoslovakia.
Funny, we talk about favorite authors. This guy, that's mine.
Yeah,
I have
great book. Love it. All about the anarchism and the bringing down of the social structure.
So good.
Awesome.
They are just releasing Fight Club 3, actually.
Capitalism sucks. I get it. Perfect. Awesome. But he took it too far.
Oh.
And he decided he was going to copy Project Mayhem, and he's like set up a bunch of bombs. A couple went off, but not all of them. Straight up got caught, and he was like, "Yeah, Project Mayhem."
I would be really impressed if when police arrested him, they told him that his name was Robert Paulson.
And then he goes, "And you are Robert Paulson."
And you was Robert Paulson.
Oh,
so
meatloaf.
So good. It's oh.
I mean, it's a great movie. It's a great novel.
The book is amazing.
But it is actually one of the most copycatted kind of works.
Is it really?
Fight Club.
Really?
It is. There were so many people who started underground fight clubs. There were so many people who were trying to do exactly what Project Mayhem was doing.
Yeah. Bummer, guys. Come on. It's good, but...
Yeah, but I will post up the lists that I looked at so you guys can check it out. But it's really interesting, the things that people are like fans of. There was a lot of like literature and music, but some of them are pretty surprising. Some of them are not surprising. KFC and John Wayne Gacy. That's a marriage that was meant to be.
A marriage made in chicken heaven.
Yes.
Oh my
23 God. Flavors of love. I don't know.
23 skidoo.
However many goddamn herbs and spices are in that friggin' chicken, okay?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Maybe I was putting Dr. Pepper. I don't know.
I couldn't tell you. That was awesome. I really enjoyed that. I had no idea. What else?
Yeah.
Or is that it?
That's all I got for my weird trivial pursuit that I went on today.
That. Yeah, that was really, really good. I wish they had. So this was a total side thought, but I thought of this earlier in the week. So did you ever use they were called Brain Quest, but they were like little cards that
Yes.
you flip that have questions on
The
them
little
and stuff.
flippy cards.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you know I bought that from a Scholastic book fair.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. So I wish I had those, but for like murder facts.
I feel like they probably do somewhere.
Would
There's
they-
got to be I'm sure there's like a Trivial Pursuit for serial killers somewhere out there.
I want that.
I almost
I'd probably be-
guarantee it.
I'd probably be terrible at it, surprisingly enough, but I want that. It's because I can't
I
ever
feel like
keep
I would do
facts in my
pretty
head
good.
straight.
I'm maybe not surprisingly. I'm very like nerdy in facts, and I'm always learning. I'm a lifelong learner. So I'm
Aren't
like a
we
really
all?
good for pub trivia and Trivial
Yes.
Pursuit. You want me on your team. Also Pictionary and
Yeah.
Scrabble.
I feel like you know a lot of the random factoids that are
I
like
do.
pulled out of thin air, kind of just like people know
Yeah.
this. Yeah, you would know that shit. We should do.
I freak people out with the weird facts that I espouse at times.
Once our shelter in places order is over, we should do bar. It'd be really fun.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You would kill it.
I also have like a ton of weird like cardboard games at my house. We did a game night once. I feel like we should do it
We
again.
did.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
we should.
not to
we
toot
should.
my own horn, but I'm like
Yeah.
pretty good.
All right, guys. I think we're gonna wrap up here. Before we go, we'll let you know that we got an episode coming out on Sunday. It's
Listen,
gonna
I almost said
be-
watch it.
What? I'm just telling the people about the episode.
I know. You guys should listen to it. It's good.
It's gonna be,
Do a lot of
shall we
research.
say, a hit?
A hint.
A hit. Like it's
Can't
gonna be a
think of
hit?
Good hint.
No, it's gonna be a hit. That is the hint.
Oh, a good hint.
No, that
it
is
is going to
the-
be a hit.
It's not as good if you don't get the pun on the first try.
Oh,
Oh my
brother.
But that'll be on Sunday. You guys have to look forward to that and all of our boomer chat that's in that one.
Yes.
So that's that. Sunday, new episode. We'll be back here next week. Same time, same place on Friday. I don't know what our theme is going
Yeah.
to be yet. We're open to suggestions. You can add us on
Yeah, send us some suggestions. I've been like reaching for those themes, you know what I mean?
I'm gonna have to. I should probably come up with one. You've been doing real good about coming up with.
I have come up with a lot.
Yeah, I'll have to think about
Sometimes things just come to me in waves, you know, ideas.
True. It's true. She texted me about something for like 6 months from now and was like, "Hey, what about this?"
I'm a
thing?"
planner. I can't help it.
Girl, you know I'm not a planner.
I'd say because I think about something for a really long time. I'm like, this case, man, it's really bugging me. Let's cover it.
Oh my gosh. Well, I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their Friday night and the rest of their weekend.
Yes,
Stay
Friday.
safe and safe. I don't know what
I disgusted myself.
Stay safe, stay home, stay washing your hands.
Mhm. Sing happy birthday.
Yeah.
Or staying alive. Staying alive. Staying alive.
I was singing the Macarena for a while. Macarena. Just to switch it up.
And then did you do the clap with your soapy hands and
Hey,
you're supposed to
Macarena.
clap?
Aye. Yeah.
Soap bubbles everywhere.
All right. On that note, we're going to get out of here. Thank you guys for joining us. See you next week. Bye.
So long.
What they discovered upon their arrival was almost unspeakable.
We thought all evil in some form or another. I'm not guilty.
The dead won't bother you. It's the living you gotta worry about.
If I couldn't keep them there with me whole, at least I felt that I could keep their skeletons.
But no matter what I did, I could not undo the